morning and welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk, and I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, joined by my favorite co-host, Mr. Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspections. Good morning.
Yes, and we're all wearing green except for Katrina.
I know. I didn't get the memo. I'm sorry.
This is blue.
And
It's a
that's
blue-green,
out-of-tally.
green-blue.
This is
With
blue.
Tally Insurance.
This is blue, guys.
It is
It's
not.
blue.
You're colorblind. Sorry, dude. 3 against 1. And Mr. Tom Hall is back in the house with H&H Environmental, and today we're going to cover what to look for in your trees and the exterior of your home, being that hurricane season is right around the corner. Tomorrow officially kicks off hurricane season, and it will run all the way through November 30th, so it's a really good time to prepare, and we're going to be bringing you guys several tips over the next several weeks with guests that are related to getting ready for storm season, which I know is your favorite.
Yeah,
topic
Leo's
there.
downright giddy. It's
Well, no,
like
it's-
5
Yeah.
months of Christmas for Leo.
2 seasons in one, if you think about it, because we had a drought last year, and we're still in a drought now. Once we get our first, if that Bermuda high moves into position and we get the rainy season, not only will it be hurricane season, it's also going to be sinkhole season. So I'm doubly excited.
Oh my goodness. Okay, maybe Laura Hall will be back as well with our geotechnical engineer. She always brings great stuff.
We need a geotech to talk about and the threat of sinkholes is real, and the threat of sinkholes this season is even worse than normal, because I often talk about sinkholes like a kitchen sink sponge. If you imagine the Florida limestone layer like a sponge, it's supposed to be wet, it's supposed to be fluffy, it's supposed to be absorbent. Well, it's dried out over the past couple of years, and it's shriveled up, creating those pockets. And we call those pockets karst activity.
It's a hard sponge.
Once you put some water, that sponge is going to suck all that water up from the surface, and once it's doing that, you'll end up with these stratified sinkholes where it's just pulling the soil down. So I'm actually more excited about sinkhole season this year than I am hurricane season this year.
Oh my gosh, we should not be excited about that, but Leo can't help it. His inner engineering nerd is just coming out.
Hey, when you
All excited.
hear within the next month we have 2 or 3 sinkholes open up, I'm predicting one in the Seffner, Lithia, Brandon area, one in the Pasco County area, and believe it or not, one in the Miami-Dade area.
Well, September is, the highest.
he's like a 6-year-old that's about to go
I
to
know.
Disney World. He is giddy.
I'm trying not to say anything.
These predictions need to happen, because if they don't happen, my credibility's on the line.
We're going to run into real estate for a minute and talk about those predictions before we continue on to storm season and trees. But the number of new listings that is on the market this week is 841. The number of price decreases coming in at 1268. The number of sold properties coming in at 819. We got 35 expired, 135 canceled, 27 withdrawn, and 782 are pending.
So we actually have, in numbers is my thing, we have a 10% decrease in the number of new listings, but what's more interesting is we have a 20% decrease in the number of pendings.
Yeah, here's your, so my prediction, especially going into an election year, we're definitely going to hit a balanced market this year. This will be the year that this happens. We're already generally at about a 4-month absorption rate, which is a 4-month supply of homes. The numbers that we're tracking, single family homes, 3 counties, so Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas. There's certainly other counties like Hernando that is considered part of the Tampa Bay greater area. And my goodness knows, Leo, we were talking about the condos, really. That
Oh, yeah,
were
no.
popping up.
This is single-family home
Yeah.
data. We're not talking condos.
So when this next report comes out, actually, there's probably a report that came out around the 20th, roughly, is when Florida Realtors drops their data. I'll have to pull the condo one, and we'll chat about that. And I was looking at the bottom of your email, and I saw something about the milestone of your ebook. I was like, that's going to make a great content.
Yeah, we published a book a year and a half ago about the new Senate Bill 4D/154, now House Bill 1021, about the need for the structural integrity reserve studies and the milestone inspections. I actually have a pretty interesting meeting this afternoon. We're doubling their dues, and they're like, we can't afford this. I'm like,
Doubling whose dues?
I can't tell you who the condominium is, but
Oh,
we're
a
doubling.
condo.
I have
Got
to have
it.
one of those awkward meetings where it's like, well, you haven't been paying enough for the past 15 years.
Got it.
You got to start paying more, and you can't special assess for
Yeah,
it.
that was missing, was that it was a condo community. I wasn't looking for the
So they can't assess for it. So how are they going to pay that?
They're just going to raise the dues.
So they can't
Okay.
assess for it?
So the way it works is if you have, like, you're supposed to be saving, let's say you have a $100,000 roof and you have to pay for it in 5 years. So you collect 20,000 a year.
20, yeah.
A year. That's oversimplifying it. So let's say it's due in 3 years. So you should already have 40,000 in the bank. If you don't have 40,000 in the bank, you now have to raise in 3 years. You now have to raise the 100,000, which means instead of saving 20,000 a year, you need to be saving 33. So that's the way the dues increase. And
Gotcha.
in the past, what would happen if smaller HOAs and COAs, they would just special assess their unit owners. Well, the problem with a special assessment is there's two problems. One, it depreciates on 27 and a half years, as opposed to your dues, which you just write off year to year. So investors hate them. The second thing is you're randomly asking your membership for big chunks of money.
That most people don't have given the current state of the economy.
Yeah, they're all saying we're living paycheck to paycheck. Oh, by the way, we haven't been assessing you adequately for the past decade, and now we need another $13,000 out of you. So, I mean, that's more criminal to the membership than it is by just kicking that can down the road.
This would be similar to like an escrow shortage, right? Like when your taxes or insurance have a big spike, and now your mortgage company is adjusting your payments, not only to make up for how much it was underfunded, right, your monthly payment, but also for the shortage and what the new payment's going to be. It's a pretty hefty amount. So, Leo, are you, just real quick to piggyback on this, Adam, and I know you want to jump in. So it's doubling, right, in the one we're talking about?
This one is doubling.
Does this include the new dues plus the cost to fund that roof? Is it going to settle back down?
Oh, no, it's actually worse than that. So this doesn't account for the insurance premium increase, and this doesn't account for operating. This is just reserves, which are just your capital projects, your big expenses that happen periodically. So their insurance has gone up. Their operating costs have gone up. I'm just one piece of the budget, but my one piece of the budget, I'm asking them to double.
Wow.
So I get my question is, because you mentioned the word criminal, what kind of liability does the prior association board have for not collecting the right amount? Or are they off the hook because this is a new bill and now it's just kind of playing catch up?
So it's always been tricky, and I'm going to say not a lawyer before I answer this question.
Naturally. No one here is. Just
so
so everybody
Florida
knows.
Statute 718 and 720 do talk about the need for reserve studies, but it was a nice to have, not a have to have.
Okay.
These new Senate bills made it a have to have. So now that it is a have to have, there's still talk about how they're going to enforce it, but supposedly the board members, if they don't comply with getting these documents done in the timeline they need it done, and they don't comply with the way you're supposed to distribute the information, they are officers of a corporation that are not acting in the fiduciary responsible manner. So that could lead to repercussions either from the state or more likely from the membership to attack the board members. Now, there's be questions about if the director and officer, the D&O insurance policy would protect them, but if they're acting negligent because they're not complying with laws they knew they needed to,
We had a certain...
that kicks over to Adam. Would D&O cover that?
We had a certain attorney on, if you remember, a while back, and he said on and off the record, I would not volunteer on a board, especially a condo, no way, no how.
No, you're an officer of a corporation, and as we recently discovered, officers of the corporation can be found guilty for multiple felony counts.
And negligence usually is not covered, but that would be probably specific to whatever policy they have. Because everybody, like even with my own like errors and omissions, certain carriers cover certain things that you would think, oh, that's simple, right? But not every E&O carrier covers for insolvency.
We're going to have
or covers for some of these other things.
Insurance policy for the insurance policy for the insurance
But
policy.
I have a question about these numbers. Now, is this 15% drop in pending, which is substantial? 15 to 20% drop in pending week to week. Is that because of Memorial Day and everything's been slow this week, or is this a turn? Is this another turn we're seeing?
It's 1 week does not dictate anything, especially over a holiday week. It's not a good indicator.
There was also graduations last week. So
and I've seen a lot of stuff get stuffed into this week, including today. Like there's a lot, including a comp for my own house I'm going to be selling soon. I'm watching it like a hawk because a really good one's supposed to close today. And so I'm just waiting to see. And, there's going to be a lot of changes on the real estate surface this year. Which,
July 1, right?
August. We'll talk about that as we get a little bit later into the year because it's still a moving target. The DOJ is still deciding the way they want to do it, and there's going to be more changes. So before we dive into that, we're going to wait and let all the dust settle, and then we know more exactly what it's going to be. We're going to talk about it. I've got my own predictions. We talked about it. I'm going to leave it at that.
No, we'll have to
So-
talk. We love doing predictions on this show, just
And we're-
like
we're
the
pretty
sinkhole season.
accurate. Most of the time, our predictions are pretty good. So tomorrow is officially kicks off hurricane season.
So excited about that.
And all the way through after Turkey Day, November 30th, and the height of hurricane season is September. It's when we get the strongest and most amount of storms and hurricane. Yesterday, actually, NOAA predicted that there's going to be 17 to 25 named storms that could form this year.
That's a heavy season.
That's very
8
heavy.
to 13 developing into a hurricane.
That's very heavy.
4 of those 7, they're saying are going to be a Category 3 or higher. And it is the highest forecast that they have ever made.
Yeah, I mean, we've had seasons before where after we go through the alphabet, we go into the Greek alphabet of lettering. So we've gotten pretty far, but even those years weren't predicted that high. Now I'm wondering, are we No, we're not 12 off from 2004 to 2016 to yeah. This should not be as high of a storm year because you got to think the solar demagnetization of the sun plays into solar flares, which dictate heat index on the Earth for how intense the hurricane season is. Yes, I do follow solar flares. For
He is a
hurricane
doctor,
season.
ladies
I
and
think
gentlemen. He
there
is a
was,
doctor.
like,
Okay,
when-
this is part of his
When
dissertation.
he was young and they learned that stuff in school, I think somebody plugged a disc into his head and then all that storage just sat there and it's still there.
Listen, I gleaned so much information from Leo that I use when I'm talking to people. So, like, keep it up, buddy. You're doing great.
No, but I'm serious.
can't
Those
remember all
solar flares have a huge impact, both from Earth warming, storms, waves. It also has an impact on basically like your cell phone signal is weak during a certain period of time. Could be a solar flare.
We just had a big solar flare.
Yeah, my service was not very
Service was
good.
Messed up for days because
Yeah.
of it.
So, a different question, kind of still related to weather. You mentioned maybe we'll finally get some rain. When can we expect that? Forget the wind, but I would love some rain because my yard looks rough.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
So there is something called the Bermuda High, and it has to shift towards Bermuda. Once that happens, historically, we do enter rainy season for each
Okay.
year. It didn't really move last year. Still waiting for it to move this year.
No Bermuda High.
No Bermuda.
Yes, Bermuda High. Any prediction on when that could happen? Or
I'm
is it
hoping
just
soon because my yard is basically brown. I got
Mine's not
No.
basically brown. Mine is dead. It is
I'm
brown.
going to give you guys some perspective because we're talking about a brown yard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Leo, if you remember, there's a little island house that you guys inspected, remember, for us. And there's people that live on that island full time that only have a cistern for water. Mm-hmm. And so while we're complaining about our grass, when we don't have any water, there's people, not only here, but other parts of the world that don't have any water.
Well,
Right?
yeah.
That is true. I mean, if you're using a
Perspective.
cistern for catch or you have a well that you're tapping into for your water, yeah, these heavy droughts have more of an implication than you realize.
So do you think, I guess quick question just to wrap up, we're going to go to a break and come back to Tom Hall. Talking about the sinkholes, what impact does that have on the wells? Is that a short answer?
Well, I mean, again, it's kitchen sink sponge.
Yeah.
So if we're going to continue to dry the sponge when we get those first rains and the ground is sucking it up to replenish itself, that's going to dry out a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, we're pulling from aquifers which are below the surface of the earth. There's one at basically 200 feet. There's another one at 800 feet, another one at 1,200 feet. We're tapping these underground rivers.
Yeah. Well, this is Tampa Home Talk, and when we come back after the break, we're going to chat with Tiny here next to me, Mr. Tom Hall. If you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, you'll see I look like a midget next to him, but this guy's the tree whisperer. He's going to tell us all about trees, and we're going to tell you some stuff to look out for as we approach hurricane season so that you don't have to make an insurance claim with somebody like Adam. Stick around. This is Tampa Home Talk. We'll be right back.
Well, this is Leo Kane reminding you that 813-377-2775 is the number for the studio. That's 813-377-2775. Text the word tree.
That's our off-air number.
That is our off-air number. Text the word tree to that number and we'll get you hooked up with Mr. Thomas Hall so he can come take a look at your tree and then chop it down.
Well, come on now. All right, so Tom, let's start with stuff to pay attention to, right? Because right now people are not thinking about this, which is why we want to do it the day before hurricane season. But when you're in the thick of it in September, everybody wants you and you can't move fast enough because the tree's fallen on their house or next to their house or on their neighbor's house. So let's talk about some of the things we should be looking out for. And I wrote down some stuff. So if I'm off center, we need to rearrange it, you let me know.
I have a bunch of questions too.
Well, I'll go with the first things I'm thinking about is if your trees are too low over your roof, anything less than say 8 feet, because oak trees normally tend to drop at least 6 feet once they're full of water. So, because a live oak weighs 62 pounds per square foot of wood,
So
and a
they just
laurel
go
oak is
whoop in the
54. Yeah, so what happens is as soon as the water comes in through the root system, come up through the trunk, and goes out for transpiration, the limbs will drop because they're full of water. And then if the wind's blowing, you could get a cut in your roof line or against your gutters, and does damage. So you just want to lift those so that you don't have to worry about water intrusion. That's kind of the first thing that I look at when I'm walking around is how low are the trees to the home. The other is if a tree is very close to the house within, say, 4 feet, you're worrying about the roots going to the house, to the foundation, diving underneath. Because what happens is water looks for the least resistance path, and so the water follows the root system and it dives underneath your house, and then it starts, because concrete is very porous. I don't think most people understand that concrete is exceedingly porous. So then the water rises into your house and you start having tile popping up and you start having water intrusion.
Cracking.
Cracking. So you want to look at that, and that also will affect the structure of the home. So that's one of the things to look at, and call your engineer. Do not call me. I'm a tree guy. The other thing that we're seeing, which is really interesting based upon what Leo was talking about earlier, is we're looking at drought stress. A lot of the oaks now are going through drought stress. And if you look at the tops of them, you'll see what we call dieback. You'll see like the top of the tree is dying back because it's doing like a person who was snow skiing. As your body gets cold, the blood comes from your fingertips and your toes to get to your heart and lungs and protect your body. Trees kind of do the same thing. They bring all their energy back to the trunk. So at the top of your tree, you'll see a lot of dead limbs. And then,
can you describe that any more? Like what dieback looks like? Is it like we're
So
going
you
into
got brown?
spring?
Is it what color are the leaves? That we're looking
There's
for?
the leaves.
And is it because
No
we're
leaves,
Is
okay.
it because we're going into spring and we should see new growth, but it's like winter?
well, no, actually, it would look like winter towards the top, but what happens is you'll see drought stress. It's so easy to see at the top of the tree, you won't see any leaves. You'll just see sticks because the tree has bringing its energy back. Now, drought stress can also, with dieback is actually a disease. It's a fungal disease. So what happens is once it's stressed and then you have the fungal disease, the tree is not producing enough leaves, so it doesn't get enough energy, and it's just kind of, goes running downhill badly.
Does that mean it's going to automatically die, or does this, if we get some water, it could heal itself, or what do we need to do for a tree
Do I
like
need to
guess,
stand
that?
up
yeah.
there with a garden hose for 10, 15 gallons a day?
What happens when the tree gets it, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, when you get a fungal disease, there's not a lot you can do but watch the root system, maybe be careful. There's some fungicides that will work to try to help the tree fight fungal diseases. But besides that, there's really nothing to do but, wait, let the tree recover. But if you get larger dieback limbs over your roof, now you got to worry about those limbs breaking off, falling and doing roof damage. Or if they're over your driveway, you have to worry about them falling and hitting your car. So that's things to look out from a trimming perspective. But what I've been seeing,
Did I
and we're
park my
seeing,
car in the wrong place out in the parking lot?
no, actually they've done a very good job. I looked through, they did some great pruning throughout the parking lot.
All right, I was about to say, do we need to do a field trip on a break so I know what we're talking about?
Really quick, because we're sidebar, remember how Tom was talking about the trees in the parking lot here of our studio?
Yeah.
And what was it, Tom, about within less than 12 months, a limb literally fell on a car right across the parking lot.
Where I'm parked.
A very big one.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't park on that side of the street anymore.
And it squished it. So then they went through and did the pruning that we had already talked about and recommended to them.
If we hear a crash, I'll be filing a claim here.
Wait, you're
The HOA.
filing a claim?
The HOA.
No.
So going back to the kind of the hurricane season, so we're really looking at drought stress. You're looking at the bark on the trees. I know a lot of people, not like me, just like with Leo, looking at solar flares and the sponge and all. I look at trees all day, so most people don't. So if you do take a minute to look at trees and look at them, green does not mean anything. That's my first rule. Green means nothing. There's a lot of people who are in great, fantastic shape but have a bad heart and fall over dead.
That
And it's
makes
the
sense.
same thing with trees. Trees are not, just because they're green does not mean they're healthy or safe, because no tree is safe. You can make it safer, but no tree is safe because trees don't die.
It's like a doom and gloom. No tree is safe.
and trees don't die like people. They'll just die. What they do is they go through a process called retrenchment. So what they'll do is they'll drop a big limb, and then they'll drop another big limb until their energy in through the roots in the trunk matches how much foliage it needs to survive.
So is it still alive, but it can die and fall back all the way to the root?
Yeah, it can drop all the way back, just keep dropping limbs till it gets to, its trunk, basically. And it's still alive. Trees are not dead unless they have absolutely no leaves on them. So if it's got one green leaf, it's not considered dead. Okay, so.
But green means nothing. That's what you just said.
Yeah, but the one green leaf means it's quote unquote alive, so you can't.
Green means nothing unless it's just the one singular leaf, and then you're good to go.
That doesn't make any sense to a non-arborist, because what about winter when all the leaves fall off?
Well, that's when the tree is going through senescence and it's just sleeping. So it's trying to recover. Now, we rarely have that happen here because the winters don't get cold enough here. That's why people say, well, things I love is my favorite one is somebody asks me, how old is that tree? And I go, well, do you know who planted it and when? Because that's the only way to know how old it is. If you look at a tree, if an arborist comes to your house, and they won't do this, but the other quote-unquote tree professionals will, and you go, how old is that tree? And they go, well, I'll bet you 28 years. You know right then.
They don't know anything.
They don't know anything because you can't tell by the size of a tree. If
They're
you
full
ever
of
go,
poop.
yeah, when you go to a new
We're on air, so I can't do it.
yeah, if you go to a new neighborhood, and you'll see they planted all the trees at the same time, and then there'll be a 5-inch or 5 dBH diameter breast height tree, and then right next to it will be a 20-inch tree. They were planted at the same time. It has nothing to do with it. One's getting more nutrients. One could be closer to a sewer line. There's a lot of things that make the
Isn't that
difference
the
in
same
tree
thing,
growth.
getting more nutrients and being right next to a sewer line?
Yes.
Well, one can just have different genes and be bigger,
Yes,
right?
and one can be bigger, and they can be both planted at the same time, same species. So what I tell people is you have to know who planted it, or you have to do take a core sample and send it out for carbon dating to know how old it is, really. The other thing is with the drought stress, you'll see in a lot of palms going through this now, especially, which are not trees.
Palms go through
Palms.
drought
Palms
stress?
aren't trees?
Palms aren't trees.
What are they?
Small root ball plants?
He talks about this every time he's
they're-
on the air.
Palms are a monocot. They're not a tree.
What's a monocot?
It's more like a grass. Like
Okay.
Washingtonian. It's like
a really big grass.
It's a really
We
big
talked
grass.
about this before too. Okay, I'm gonna loosely say palm tree, but how many different species of palms are there? Isn't there like 20?
in
something?
Florida, there is around 2,500
Oh.
different species.
thought
So
it
when
was
somebody
20.
goes, I know every palm there is, that's another
They're
person
full
that
of
doesn't
poop.
know they're talking.
Isn't there an arboretum in St. Pete that is specialized in palms?
Yes, and there's also one in Orlando, the University of Florida, which I hate to say it that way. They're very good at it. But, when you're looking at palm species, you have to do the same things. A lot of palms look the same, but they're not the same species.
Well, I remember specifically
grass.
one guy we had on the air a while back. He had a farm, and he grew these palms that could actually sustain and grow and live in cold weather, like snowy climate. And he was talking about how he had a whole truckload of them, and he went up to like New York or somewhere to plant them, and people were following him, trying to literally buy the trees off of someone else's trees that were already bought. And I was
They're grass,
well,
somebody
not
else's
trees.
grass.
Yeah, palms. All right. So back to the trees. So some of the
I do
stuff.
have a question real quick
Okay.
while we're still on palm trees. Do they hold up better in hurricanes than oaks, or is that...
They're made for hurricanes.
Well, palms, there are some palms that do very well. Really, they can bend and they have a lot of momentum. So they bend and they come back. So you don't have, and their root balls are so large underneath the ground that it's more like squatted down.
Okay.
They don't have enough head to catch and just snatch. But they will break too, especially when you get into the Washingtonians who can get 60, 70 feet tall. When they do snap, they
It's a big
they
blade
can
of
do
grass.
Snap,
they can do
crackle,
some
pop.
damage.
So, fun fact, if you ever go to Maui, there's a certain side of the island where it's just windy every afternoon, and all the palm trees are actually bent back. They're permanently bent back towards the buildings, away from the coastline, because they're just subjected to 30, 40 mile an hour winds constantly.
I've seen some funky shaped palm, especially where I used to live, like all kind of twisty, funky looking palms. Anyway, this is Tampa Home Talk. When we come back, we are going to get back to trees. We're going to tell you what to look for. We're going to talk about those broken, bowed, and splintered branches, and so much more. And I know you're going to have questions. So 813-377-2775.
Italian Insurance, and we'll do our little tip of the week here on insurance. I do always recommend getting your trees trimmed. Oh yeah, if you have questions, 813-377-2775.
Still look.
It's been a couple weeks since I've been here, so 813-377-2775. Speaking to the tree trimming, on the front end, when we're talking about homeowners insurance and getting coverage, a lot of carriers are doing their own inspections. They're going to want to see those trees trimmed back. So if you have anything touching, you're trying to switch insurance, you're trying to buy a house, make sure those trees are trimmed
And according to Tom, it should be 8 feet.
Yes, 8 feet. Yes, and the carriers will look at that too. So make sure you're doing that. Another good reason to get your trees trimmed as well, especially if in our area, lots of houses have many trees on their property. Debris removal is not always covered, right? So especially if it's not causing damage to your house. So you don't want to get in a situation where we have a hurricane and now you're out there with a chainsaw trying to get your trees out, or you're paying exorbitant prices because now you have all, the tree people are all out trying to get that claim money, right? So it's better to be preventative and be proactive than it is to wait and let it cause some damage. Plus, if we do get a hurricane and a tree hits your house, remember your hurricane deductible is typically going to be 2% of your dwelling limit. So if the average dwelling limit is, say, $3,000 or $300,000, that's going to be $6,000 out of pocket. So save yourself some money.
Yeah, one of the things I wrote down is a good time to either check your insurance deductibles.
Yes.
Or get insurance, period. Because 15 to 20% of Floridians don't even have insurance, and that's 12% higher than the national average.
Yes, and that number is increasing as time goes on because the costs are going up, right? So make sure you double check on your insurance. Make sure you have that policy sitting there, right? Like, make sure you have that policy on hand. That should be in your little safe box that you take with you, because that's what you're going to need if you do have to file a claim. And make sure it's paid, right? Especially if you have a policy that comes due, like renews in the next couple months. These mortgage companies, most of them are pretty good, but some of them aren't that great about getting those payments in. So make sure you're keeping track of that. Or if you have to pay it yourself, make sure you're checking your mail. I get people all the time, I didn't receive this, I didn't get that. Well, it got emailed, it got mailed, and now you could be SOL. So make sure you're doing that. And while we're on that topic, if you are trying to switch, because we are in a little bit of a softer market this year than we were in 2022 and 2023, shop early.
Do it now.
Because the problem is, and we see this all the time, we get to September, October, and hurricanes sitting out in the Gulf, and everybody's shut down. So now you can't get coverage. We can't rewrite you. When Ian hit, I had a carrier that they shut down production for Ian and never turned it back on. They still are not writing new property policies. I even had one that we were going to write. I think it might have even been one of your clients where it was a brand new house. And I was like, all right, we'll just have to wait for them to go. They didn't even take the brand new house right after that.
Wow.
So we had to shift and go somewhere else. So shop early. You can typically issue something. 30 days is like, the kind of on the short end. Some carriers will go up to 60 days that they'll let us issue. So now's the time to shop and be prepared. And there's nothing wrong with switching midterm if you find that rate that, is going to be a little bit more competitive. I mean, I have somebody where we're rewriting them. The new policy is going to be about $100 more, but we know the renewal when we get to September is probably going to be $500 or $600 more. I told them, hey, let's not wait. Let's get it done early. You pay a little bit more now, but we won't be sitting here in September,
An even higher premium.
higher premium, possibly with less
Did
options.
you say something?
No.
that look?
I wanted to talk about my least favorite tree on the planet.
All right, so 813-377-2775. You have questions. You want to check over that insurance. You've got questions about your tree. And we're going to talk about some other things to also look for as we move into hurricane season so that you can get these dead, broken, damaged, fungal, whatever trees dealt with before.
Well, you know, when you're talking about trees, trees have a profile. So if you're looking at laurel oaks,
I hate those.
jacarandas,
That's what I want to talk about.
lead trees, any of those fast-growing trees,
Hate all
flowering
of them.
trees,
Developers love
they
them.
split quick. They fall, drop limbs quick.
Aren't jacarandas the pretty ones that flower?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, or Royal Poncianas, where you see this big, beautiful head. Then they're huge trees. They grow fast. The problem is because they grow fast, they don't have they're not like a live oak where they're solid. They break really easy. So
plant
when
them
you have
deeper?
some over, it's not the root system. It's just the tree is just weak.
Yeah, it's just the developers love them. They
Yeah.
grow fast. They plant them in the wrong places.
Are they
Within
cheap?
5 years, no, they just grow fast.
They grow
Oh,
fast.
that's what I want.
So the developers love them, but they take out driveways, they take out sidewalks, they cause streets to buckle. I mean, I hate them, and then they cause tree root heaving. They tack plumbing pipes because the root system's growing fast, and the best source of water is your plumbing pipe.
Yes, and they love to wrap around it, and they kind of squeeze it.
Oh, yeah, the jacaranda tree. That's it? That's the pretty one,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
beautiful.
It's an enemy,
Yes,
An enemy.
an enemy of structural integrity.
Now they break quick, but they're beautiful. So if you plant them in your yard, just plant them away from your buildings. Don't put it really close to your home or really close to your driveway. But they are gorgeous.
I love one of those.
I love
How
tababuya
fast-
trees. They're
Look,
lower.
I'm looking at
dri-
pictures of this online. How long does it take?
It's like
to
a wedding
grow?
corridor right there.
It
It's
doesn't
like
take that long.
What's not that long?
5 to 8 years, they grow quick.
Yeah, so she's looking right now,
Oh,
just
it's
for
like
the
a
listener,
flower.
she's looking at one of those canopy type things where it's over a walkway, but because the leaves are blue, or because the flowers are blue or purple, it's adding a purple hue to the entire walkway, and it's one of those long profile ones where you'd see those wedding pictures.
Yes.
Definitely. Look at that.
So there's a lot of those great trees out there, a lot of flowering trees, but understand the difference in a live oak, which is very sturdy tree, good deep root system. But since I said that, let me go back. There was a study done by Dr. Edward Gilman and the University of Florida, and in the Tampa Bay region. I know I'm a Georgia dog, so I hate saying it, but
You
the
guys
Gators are good.
can't
The
pick
Gators
on
are good.
UF. They are strong.
So, but what happened is the study said that there's 96% of all the hardwood trees we have here in the Tampa Bay region do not have a taproot. So
What does that mean? What's a taproot?
Okay, a taproot is like if you're up in upstate, like in Georgia or North Florida or something, where a tree has a root system that goes straight down the ground, and that root is only for stability. It has a taproot, so it can fight the storms better. But because we live in an area where the water table's so high, there is no taproot. And because the root system can't breathe deeper than 24 inches, those giant trees you're all looking at, they're not in the ground deeper than 2 feet because they can't breathe after 2 feet. And they don't have a taproot because of the water table. So what happens is you have this giant tree, and then you don't like it, or your neighbor doesn't like it, and they take half the tree off. They cut it back from your
Yes.
property line. And what happens is the tree falls over, and it falls because it's unbalanced. There's an unbalanced tree is not a safe tree. So
So is that
balanced
tree
is
going to
safe.
fall towards the house or fall towards the neighbor who cut it? I would think with
Yes.
all the growth on your side of the property line, it's falling at you.
Yes.
So if you're looking at a Y and someone cuts the left side of the
So
Y,
if you
it's
hate
going
your
right?
neighbor, you trim your side and just let it fall.
And I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV or the radio.
You'd be a good one,
But
though.
you do not want to cut one side of the tree. You want to balance it and prune the other. If you do that, you do create the possibility that your pruning has allowed this tree now to fall on your neighbors, and you might be getting a phone call from
What about root blading? Is that the same thing?
when you come through and you can do some root pruning, but you have to be careful because you might root prune a tree understanding that the root table's so high that the tree's now in balance. And what happens once it starts to rain and that tree fills with water, its weight's going to almost triple. And then you've got a tree that's leaning, you've got a compromised root plate.
You put that tree on a
The
diet.
tree's coming. It's coming
Heavy.
down.
Big dude. So what stuff people can look for? Like, cause honestly, most people, so many people in today's working day and age, they leave in a hurry to go to work. They come home in a hurry to have dinner and spend 10 minutes with their family. At least it feels like it. The last thing they're doing is checking out all the trees and stuff in there. So the goal and the object of this show would be to have someone take a Saturday, walk around, look at their trees to see if they should further call an arborist.
Yes.
Like you. So give us some visual things that a non-arborist can see that they should say, hey, I probably should call someone to look at this.
First thing, if it's a multi-stem tree where you have like a tree that has multiple trunks, that is not a good structure. So I'm always a structure person. You look at it like you're building a home. You want a good solid foundation. So when it's a multi-stem tree, a multi-trunk tree, that's something to look at. If you're looking at your tree and you're seeing like brown fungus looking, and see like a brown spot, that's called brown fungus, and we know that there's some decay there. If you see mushrooms, there's called Ganoderma luciden, and that's Ganoderma luciden. If you see Ganoderma in the root plate, means that the root system is dying, it's rotting away. If you see it in the tree, then you have decay in the tree, and there's so much decay that it's pushed out kind of these mushrooms or this fungus out. Those are really big things to look for, because those are super indicators you're about to have a major problem.
What about when bark starts to come off the tree? That's a big deal.
Yeah, when bark's sloughing off, just think a tree is a living organism like a person. It breathes, so it's living. If you were standing there and your skin started to just slide off your body, you'd be in trouble.
That's a good way to...
So when you're looking at
sounds like radiation poisoning to me.
Yeah, if you look at an oak and the bark sliding off, trust me, it's a big dog.
So I have a question for you, and I'm sure it's different in different counties or municipalities, but at what size of tree do you need to get a permit to remove it?
For most municipalities,
The golden question.
4 dBH.
So what's 4 dBH? Your
About
hands are bigger than mine.
16 inches around.
Okay, so the diameter.
Yes, the diameter divided by 3.14. I'm taking you back to school.
It's pi.
And if that's over the 4, you cannot cut it without a permit. And pretty much every municipality, especially in the Tampa, Hillsborough area, they will have fun with you.
So could
They'll
you...
hunt you down and take your first
Now, I
picture.
guess the question is like, let's say you wanted to cut it. Well, what are the reasons you can cut it down, I guess, is a question.
Under House Bill 1159, which was passed in 2019.
You guys in your house.
I love it. No, House Bill. This was a great bill. This allowed the arborist to have more control.
Anyways,
Yes,
back to you.
It allowed the arborist
As they
to come
should.
to your property and you, the property owner, to say, I'm afraid of this tree. And then if there was a reason based upon the tree being diseased or root system compromised.
Or looking spooky.
We could take it out. Yes, you could take it out under the House Bill rule.
Okay.
Now, the city of Tampa kind of changed that. So if you're in the city, it's way different.
I'm in the city, so go ahead and lay it on me.
So even though that is correct, unless the tree is diseased, even if it's structurally compromised, you still have to get a permit, or you can get fined or have a problem. But you just write an arborist statutory letter if you're in the city, where in anywhere else you would just write an arborist report and say, I attest that this tree should come out because it's a hazard to this person's property.
And in the city of Tampa, we have to do structural engineering letters for that.
What about if you want to just replace it? Still the same hoops you got to jump
You
through?
still got to take it.
If I want to replace an oak with a mango tree, I gotta. All right.
And you can't just take a fruit tree out unless it's a citrus tree. A mango tree, avocado, those are also protected.
Well, I want to put one in. I want to get rid of the oak.
Citrus
and
is
put
not
that in.
protected due to Big Orange.
Oh, Big Orange. Forgot about those guys.
I'm serious.
All right, well, this is Tampa Home Talk.
Text Big Orange to
We'll talk about that.
813-377-2775.
Big Orange. It can actually go through your yard, say you have some kind of disease that you may or may not
Yes.
have, and force you to remove all your citrus trees.
Yes.
We'll talk about that more when we come back. 813
And listings.
377-2775. We'll wrap up the tree talk and talk about some of the listings. This is Tampa Home Talk. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, how many trees per...
Welcome home. This is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection, trying to pair up the perfect animals for the trees you might be planting in your backyard.
Well, and Adam, you had a great question on the break. What did you ask Tom?
I asked how much the permits were to remove trees.
And the permits actually depend upon the municipality. In the city of Tampa, grand trees are 158, non-grand trees are 128. But if you're in the county, it's $80, and if you're in Dunedin, it's $25.
So what's the range from $25 to $125 for a permit?
I would say your range for permits is anywhere from $10 to $200.
Okay.
Based
that's pretty
upon what
good.
municipality you're in.
Most of them probably right in the middle somewhere.
Yes, and it covers your whole property, so it could be for 5 or 6 trees that one price. It doesn't have to be just for one.
What's the total cost like? And I know that's a loaded question.
I
But
mean, yeah,
like between the arborist letter and the cost to remove a tree.
The $200 pales in comparison if you're removing a large tree that requires a crane that has to be stump
Of course,
grinded.
yes.
Yeah, and also if you take out a tree, you could be looking at normally $325 per inch fine for taking out a live oak or a laurel oak that you don't have permission.
How much
to.
is that usually? Some of the big ones they take down.
I've seen fines for over $75,000 for taking out a tree that they didn't have a permit for. So you want to have a permit. You don't, or you have the actual arborist letter in your hand. Because if you have the arborist letter in your hand, which normally costs around $125 or more dollars, but if you have if you have that letter, then when the city comes and says, "Why did you take the tree down?" You just hand them the arborist report. You're good.
What, can you do it before the permit or no?
You don't have to have a permit if you have that. That arborist report or the engineering report is your permit.
Oh, okay.
It is your
Thanks
permit.
to this House bill.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, is it because of the
So
house
it's
bill?
one or the other.
Yes, but you better have one.
I would highly recommend spending the money on the arborist letter. I'm just saying because I know what they're talking about more
Well,
than
and
the.
he's gonna. I just texted him my address. He's gonna check out my house, and he says he does free assessments.
Yes, I come by, I look, I do free assessment. The only time I charge is if I actually have to put something in writing for the assessment. But if I do the work, like we look at the tree, figure out what we think is best for the tree, because I always want the input of the homeowner or the tree owner. And then based upon that, I don't charge for the letter because we're doing the work.
Yeah, Tom does a great job. All my people love him. Pat, as a matter of fact, Debbie and Robert, we had to have that big tree in their front yard dealt with. Remember, you went and trimmed it back, the roots and part of the crown, right?
Yeah, we had to, we lowered the crown because you can reduce a crown of a tree, which cuts down the wind, and we don't over center prune. This is one of the things that you look for too in your tree. If somebody's turned your tree into broccoli, where there's just like there's no inner leaf, that is not good, people. That is not good proper pruning, because what happens is when the wind hits those long elongated limbs and it starts swishing back and forth, it's like a switch, and it like a whip, and it breaks. So you want to have some interior growth to slow that momentum down so the limb doesn't move as much and it doesn't snap off. So you really don't want to over center prune. You're looking at maybe 10 to 20% for a look, but you don't want to take all the interior growth out. That's not making it better for hurricanes. That's making it more dangerous.
If you have any question about any of this stuff and you want a professional opinion, Tom is always my go-to guy. 813-377-2775. You can call or text Tom or Tree, and I'll know who you're looking for. 813-377-2775. Speaking of which,
I have listings.
let's talk about some of the listings.
I have
And,
listings. I have expensive listings.
I'm
I
trying to
have
think
cheap
about,
listings. I have listings.
which ones might have trees? This one's got a lot of trees, but none of them really affecting that property.
So this is the Beryl Project Engineering sponsorship of the announcement of the Keller Williams
Listings?
and
Dally Insurance sponsorship of Beryl Insurance.
Oh, here we go. You're going to run out of time to talk about it.
we have this beautiful $1.1 million house built in 2005 in the English Tudor style, nestled on 1.16 acres of land.
Gorgeous home.
This is in Tarpon Springs, 665 Laura Lane. This home is beautiful.
It really is.
No deed restrictions. It's got a laundry chute. It's got everything you'd expect at an English Tudor
And
home.
it's got a huge backyard where you have plenty
1.16
of room
acres.
to put in a large pool and still have a ton of trees behind you. It's super private.
And it's
super
west
good
facing.
location.
It's technically facing the water. It's west facing.
It's a very, very beautiful house.
Closer to the bay or Gulf, or closer to the lake.
Mr. Throw It on the floor.
To
It's
the
in
next
Tarpon Springs, so it is
Closer to Lake Tarpon or closer to the Gulf?
Probably closer to Lake Tarpon.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And now, since I talked about an expensive listing, which is adequately priced for what it is because it's a beautiful English style home, I also have a
Affordable
affordable house. It's
There
a
we go.
starter home. It's a 2-1. This one is in Holiday. It's 2024 Melody Drive in Holiday, Florida. For $225,000, you can have this mid-century gem. 2-1, great starter home, low-profile roof. It's got a garage with a driveway that just wants to suck that car straight into it.
It's a pretty cute little house. It really is. The yard's nice, fenced, really pretty.
Oh, well, I think Mr. Tom might be taking that
He's
one.
going to check out the trees. That's what he's looking at.
Yeah, there's...
Camphor.
Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't like that tree in
You
that.
can tell what kind of tree it is in a black and white picture.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
impressed.
Up next, we have 19211 Pelican Ridge Lane. This is in New Tampa. 33647 is the zip code.
Gated community.
Gated community, 2004 built house. This has got beautiful gables that reach out to you, a covered entranceway, so when you do have those torrential downpours, you can lock your door or unlock your door without getting drenched in the rain.
Great floor plan, too.
Yes, this is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house.
What's our price?
This one is $615,000.
It's got a pool. Great house. Really, really great
This
house.
is a completely great house. Up next, we have 13117 Marbled Godwood Road in Weeki Wachee, Florida. This is a great one. It's near the water.
Almost a half acre, yeah.
Yeah, almost a half acre.
Close
This
to the
is
Weeki Wachee River.
$325,000. The Weeki Wachee River is great for if you like to kayak, if you like to paddleboard, if you like to stand-up paddleboard,
If you like mermaids?
if you like mermaids, if you like seeing manatees between the months of April and September. This is a great house for you. And it's half an acre in Weeki Wachee. And it does come complete with an American flag hanging in the front yard, because that I would expect in Weeki Wachee.
And that one is so colorful. It's like sunshine when you walk inside.
I love it. $325,000, Weeki Wachee.
What a deal.
This one should go fast. And lastly, we have 5909 Wedgefield Drive in Zephyr Hills, Florida. This one is a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house.
Lake Bernadette on the golf course.
It's on the golf course. So if you are a golfer, you want to pick this thing up. Recently price reduced down to $525,000. So this is a motivated seller. And
What hole?
The primary bedroom is also huge. I don't know what hole. I knew you were going to ask for that, and now I can't remember. And it's got a huge lanai on the back. I want to say third, but I could be
How
wrong.
much hail damage on the roof?
No, this is a gable roof. So this is built in a way where it's actually harder for golf balls to hit them. This is where gables actually are better than hip roofs when you're near a golf course, because the gable creates a different angle of attack. And from
Now
the
you're
shape,
just breaking windows instead of damaging roofs.
it's a beautiful home for $525,000, built in 2006.
It's got a huge
in
lanai to
Zephyr Hills.
protect you from those
And
broken
the lanais
windows.
will
All right.
definitely protect you.
813-377-2775. It's been a great show. Thank you, Tom. If you want to get some information on your trees, you need somebody to check it out, do it before the height of storm season. 813-377-2775. Remember, love where you live, or we're going to fix it. Welcome home.
I like that.